Hi everyone! This is the first video in my C++ coding lesson series, and we're going to start by talking about variables. Basically, in order to understand variables, what we're going to be looking at is what types of data are stored on a computer, like the basic types, and then how do we manipulate them a little bit. Pretty simple stuff. So first, let's start with what is a variable. And actually, you've seen them before. Well, obviously, the first example is things like math. With graphing, that most of you have done many times, you have things like y equals x plus 1. Well, let me tell you, y and x, those are variables. And if you change one, you can find the other, right? Because this is a relationship. This is actually a function. We'll talk about that in the future, but that's one example. Another example, if you ever do art, you could think of a variable like opacity or your transparency. That is something that you're changing. It's not static. It's a variable that can be changed to control the value of color or transparency of something. And then even the red, green, blue values could be thought of as variables too. Another example is on your phone. You have things like controlling the volume, controlling the screen brightness. Those are variables. They are data that's stored on your phone that is used, then can be manipulated by the user, and you're changing the value of that variable, which then has an effect on the phone, how it behaves. So variables are everywhere. Everywhere. Now, have you ever answered a questionnaire? So like, how many hours did you sleep? What is your first initial? True or false? Mr. Singbeel's mustache is incredible. Well, let's say we answered this. How many hours of sleep? Well, I got 8. What is your first initial? L. True, obviously. So how would we go and take these and store them? Well, we could take them and just say like, okay, answer 1, answer 2, answer 3, and be like, all right, here's our data, and we're going to store it. And then we could find them later. But there's a problem with that, because if I just say answer 1, answer 2, answer 3, it doesn't really tell me what value it is or what number type it should be. So a computer would have trouble understanding this. So maybe we could say like hours sleep and first initial and is mustache good. That would be a really good step. However, this still is missing one thing. The problem is that this would be fine for humans, but for a computer, it needs to know what type of variable. So what we could do is we take the same thing and we add in front of it a keyword indicating the type of variable that it is. Int, char, and bool in this case. What the heck are those things? Well, in case you haven't noticed yet, these are variables. And this is exactly what a variable would look like in C++. Pause for that exploding mind to just really sink in. All right, let's continue. So variables have 3 key characteristics. You have the name, you have the value, and you have the data type. So the name tells you if it's basically it gives the computer a way of accessing that value. It has to be unique. The value is the actual information being stored. The data type is a set type for that data, so that the computer knows how much room it needs to make on the memory in order to actually get that value and store it. So let's talk about data types. There are actually quite a few, but there are some main ones. And so you have things like integers, characters, booleans, what's called a floating point, and something called a double floating point. And let's look at each one. So integers are whole numbers. Floating points are decimal numbers. But as a rule of thumb, floating points can only be 7 digits in total. Integers, you can have an integer be positive or negative, but no decimal at all. Then you have what's called a double floating point. That can be up to 15 digits of information. So it can be more accurate, higher number of decimal places if you wanted, or you can have a larger number. Boolean is basically just true or false. And then characters represent a single character of text. In other programming language, they have something called string, which is a special variable that holds multiple characters of text. In C++, it's a bit different. String is an object, not a variable, and a string has multiple characters in it. Or you can have an array of characters or a list of characters which could represent a phrase. So let's play Guess That Variable. And so first one we have int game count equals 194. So what is its variable name? What is its value? What is its data type? Well, variable name, game count. Not too hard. Value. Value is 194. Data type, int. What does int stand for? Stands for integer. All right, next one. That was too easy. Guess that variable. Char initial equals s. Variable name, value, data type. Well, variable name is initial. Value is s. Data type, character. That's right. Let's try again. Oh, I messed it up, but whatever. Guess that variable. What do you think it is? Variable name, hungry. Value, true, always. Data type, Boolean. Boolean is a true or false. And there we went through some examples. Hopefully you got full marks. Oh, we have one more. Guess that variable. Oh, tough one. Variable name, value, data type. Well, the name is %. The value is 0.8. The data type, floating point. Float is the abbreviation. And now, that's all of the Guess That Variable quiz. Now it's time to learn how to create new variables. So remember that you have to declare the data type when you create it, which means that when you, for example, make a variable to hold how many cubes your robot has, then you'd say int cube count, and then you can give it a starting value of 0. And then double angle is 90. So let's say that you're storing angular values, then you could use something like this. But we have to give it a data type. We can't just say angle. We have to say double angle. It's the type of value. Now, what if I wanted to change the values? So you only have to declare the type when you define it. But when you actually use it, let's say we set it as 0 instead, for example. Let's say what we're going to do is we're going to use that. That means we go cube count is cube count plus 1, which means we're adding 1 to the count. And then for angle, we just say angle is mygyro.getHeading. It's assuming that we have an inertial sensor, we're going to get the heading and store it into the angle variable. So notice the big difference is I'm using the cube count and angle as the names only, and I'm not using the data type anymore because I don't need to. If I wanted to rewrite it and erase all of its, or basically completely reset it, then I could reset it by providing it again with int and double. But no need to do that. What else? Yeah, so you have this is to create new variables, and this is to change the value of existing variables. Now, where could we use variables in robotics? So some examples are things like storing sensor data, setting values for motor speeds, making your code a little bit faster to tweak, a little bit more flexible, or to another big thing is to use it for functions, which we'll be talking about next time. So let's look at an example of some code. Very simple code for making motors move. So we have left motor setting velocity, right motor setting velocity. We have spinning the motors for 2 seconds, and then we stop. So where could we use variables? Well, what we could do is we could create a value called speed and another value called drive time and pass those values in to our code. And then we only need to change it up in the top, and we don't need to change it inside of our actual, inside of this more complicated part. I just can change it up here. Whoa, dude! Let's look at an example. So, if we take a look at this, we have we have our little trike bot, and we have some simple code here. So this one is executed with no variables, and this one executes with variables. And we'll see that it actually operates pretty much the same. So first of all, goes forward, this one, and then it goes forward again. And you can see that I tweaked it. This one was 10, and this one was 50, and that 50 applied to the speed here. Now I could change this to 10, and it would actually behave the exact same as the first one. Now, of course, I have to log in first if I want to modify, or you could make a copy of it. If you want to edit it yourself, just make a copy of the code. So you go up to options and you choose copy project, and then you can tweak it yourself too. But here, let's change this to 10, and then let's run it. I can also move this down a bit. So there it stops. And there it goes again. Now see, if I wanted to change this one, I'd have to change it here, here, and here. But in this case, all I have to do is change these two values, and it impacts the whole thing. So I could change this to 80, run it. So first, it's still going to do this one. And then, boom, there we go. And that is the power of variables. Thanks for watching.